The polymerization process and initiator used for that polymerization process. For the free radical polymerization, initiator used as the diacetyl peroxide, dicumyl peroxide, AIBN, benzyl peroxide, ammonium, sodium, potassium persulfate, ROOH Fe2+, and H2O2 Fe2+, and more. For the coordination polymerization, the initiator used the TiCl4 and AlC2H5 का thrice, and second is TiCl3 and AlC2H5 का twice Cl. For the anionic polymerization, the initiator used for the anionic polymerization is benzyl, lithium, sodium naphthalene, NH2, KNNH2, CH2, C6H5CH2Na, and C6H5CH2Li. For the cationic polymerization, the mostly used the Lewis acid as the initiator. For example, BF3, SbCl5, zinc chloride, and zinc, ZnCl2, sulfuric acid, H2SO4, SClO4, and H3PO4. This is the initiator used in the cationic polymerization. Remember this, all the initiator used in the different types of polymerization process. The melting point of the different types of nylon. First is nylon 6, then polyamide 6 has a melting point around 265 degrees centigrade. For the polyamide 6,8, nylon 6,8 has a melting point 240 degrees centigrade. Polyamide 6,10 nylon 16 has the melting point around 225 degrees centigrade. Polyamide 6,12 nylon 6,12 have the melting point around 212 degrees centigrade. And nylon 6 polyamide 6 have the melting point around 235 to 230 degrees centigrade. Nylon 7, polyamide 7 have the melting point around 223 degrees centigrade. Nylon 8, polyamide 8 have the melting point around 180 degrees centigrade. And polyamide 12, nylon 12 have the melting point around 180 degrees centigrade. Remember this data. If you cannot remember the data, then understand what is the concept behind the calculate the melting point. The melting point of the polymeric material is directly proportional to the polar group in polymer, and indirectly proportional to the aliphatic chain length. So in the nylon 6, nylon 7, nylon 8, nylon 12, the aliphatic chain length of the polymer is increased, that wise their melting point will be in decreasing order. In the nylon, similarly in the nylon 6, nylon 6,8, nylon 6,10 and nylon 6,12, the aliphatic chain length increases, that's why their melting point will be in decreasing order. Different types of the characterization technique and their application area. First is the infrared spectroscopy. Higher spectroscopy used to the identification of the polymer and the functional group, and the TEM is used to know the internal structure of the polymer, like the shape, size, dispersion. Simply say that morphology of the polymer. The DSC, differential scanning calorimetry, used to measure the phase transition temperature, that means glass transition temperature, melting point, crystalline temperature, flow temperature, and the percentage crystallinity of the polymer. The TGA The thermogravimetry analysis TGA used to measure the thermal and oxidative stability of the polymer, also measure the degradation impurity of the polymer. Rectifier aid to the polymer to improve the tack and PL adhesion. Some example of the rectifier is the ester gum, rosin ester, hydrocarbon resin, and terpene resin. Extender. Some example of the extender like as the paraffin ion, naphthalenic ion, aliphatic hydrocarbon. And accelerator is used to increase the cross linking in the polymer, such as the zinc, ZNO, thiourea, aldehyde, amine, thiojoles, dicarbomates, etc. The retarder. Some example of the retarder is salicylic acid, benzoic acid, and thylic anhydride. Remember this ingredient used in the rubber. Plasticizer used to increase the flexibility in the polymer. Then some example of the plasticizer is like as the dioctyl phthalate, pentachlorothiophene, tricresyl phosphate. It is. And the second, flame retardants. The flame retardants is one of the important additive to increase the flame retardancy of the polymer. Some example of the flame retardant is the ammonium trioxide, antimony trioxide, ammonium phosphate, chlorinated paraffin. The filler is the one of the most additive in the polymer to reduce the cost of polymeric material. First is the calcium carbonate, talc, soapstone, barium sulfate, mica, and more. Reinforcement is one of the most important ingredient additive in the polymer to increase the modulus and strength of the polymeric material. First example of the reinforcement is the glass fiber, carbon nanotube, carbon black, jute, zinc oxide. Some mechanical property and their testing standard. The first is the flexural strength. Flexural strength is measured by the 3-point loading using the standard ASTM D790. For the impact strength using the notch iode ASTM standard ASTM D256. For the hardness is measured by the durometer ASTM D2240. For SOR D is used for the plastic product and SOR A is used for the rubber product. And tensile strength is measured by the standard UTM universal testing machine under the standard ASTM D638.